The Elden Ring DLC introduced us some absolutely fantastic bosses like Messmer and Radhone, but almost nobody saw an actual sunflower boss coming, and I bet even less people thought you would be able to play the game with the remains of its dead carcass. Now, with me being a dedicated enjoyer of the photosynthesis process, I decided to beat all the remembrance bosses in Shadow of the Earth tree by only using the Shadow Sunflower Blossom. Before we continue, I will let you know that Miyazaki-san himself thinks you should totally subscribe to this channel if you end up liking the content. Come on, look at this graph. I'm counting on you to fix it. To get this weapon, you need to beat the Scooby-Doo avatar in the back of Shadow Keep, but since I had already burned it down, for science of course, I traded its remembrance with Enya at the round table hold, upgraded it to +10 with my good friend Huge, and changed my stats with the Moon Queen as the Shadow Sunflower Blossom scales mostly off faith and strength. All of this before starting New Game +1 with a clear sight on the Realm of Shadow and Miquella's Secret Garden. The plan was to take advantage of the usual Golden Vow and Hall of Shabribi buffs that together give me an extra 40% damage, and use a combination of charge and jump attacks as well as the Ash of War that pretty much allowed me to bonk everybody with the flower 4 times for massive plant power. For the majority of the run, I used the Axe Talisman for 10% extra damage on charged attacks, the Claw Talisman for 15% more damage on jump attacks, the Sacred Scorpion Charm for a 12% holy damage buff, the Shard of Alexander that increases skill damage by 15%, and the Two-Handed Sword Talisman that was the only one I still had to collect from the DLC. This talisman will increase my damage by an extra 15% as I will be two-handing this massive piece of floor with both my hands most of the time.
Yeah, boy.
DLC access is tied to beating Radhone and Mohg, and since this was New Game +1, I already had all my setup done, only occasionally needing to grab a few extra items. One thing you do not keep on a New Game cycle is your rune arc, so I started by making my way to Stormville Castle to face Margit. Before the fight, I use Golden Vow, Howl of Shabribi, and drink my physics flasks that throughout this run will be mostly filled with the Holy Shrouding Cracked Tear for a 20% buff on the mentioned type of damage, the Blood-Sucking Tear for another 20% extra damage at the cost of consuming your HP at the same time, and also later on the Spiked Cracked Tear for a handy 15% more damage output on every charged attack. There's not much to say about this fight as I'm pretty overpowered at this point, and my flower makes short work of Morgoth's AI clone. That was annoying. Through the gate and past the always angry brigade, it's time to get rid of Godric, which as expected also doesn't offer much resistance. 2.5 years later, and I still find myself amazed at the fact that his Great Rune is this good. With the new shiny badge in the top left corner acquired, I make my way into Caelid, South Florida to partake in the weirdest summer festival that I have ever attended, the Radhone Festival. I came prepared with flowers, but it turns out Radhone isn't a big fan of greens. That left me no choice but to send him directly to Miquella via registered mail. At this point, I was doing so much damage that there was no way I could not beat him. Radhone down, check. Both halves of the Dectus Medallion, check. Time to talk about fingers again and do various quests to get to Mohgwyn Place, invading and beating Magnus in the Altus Plateau, and saying hi
Hello there.
to Irina is all we need to do to get the Pure Blood Knight's Medal that allows us to travel directly into Lord Mohg's domain. For this fight, I go in with my usual buffs and use the Shackle 2 times before phase 2 to maximize the damage and repeatedly headbutt him, giving Miquella the final piece for his Psycho Cocktail. Mohg never stood a chance. On to the Realm of Shadow, and you know what's even cooler? You actually get to keep your Scooby-Doo Blessing level from the previous cycle, so entering the DLC this time, I was already at level Blessing 16. A few more fragments collected, and I make it to Bellerot Settlement, almost at maximum Scooby-Doo power, or level 19 in simplified Chinese. Although I'm wearing armor and I have a bunch of fragments to my name, I'm still taking a lot of damage from the enemies here, so I end up getting blasted a couple of times on my way to the Dancing Parade at the top of this settlement. Now, this is not any boss, it's a divine beast, and you know what divine beasts do, right? No? Well, apparently they have 3 very annoying phases that are beautiful, don't get me wrong, but they are also annoying. I go in with my skill setup, trying to maximize the damage from the Shadow Sunflower headbutt, but don't find much success in it and end up having to rely on jump attacks to bring the festivities to an end, even without having the Claw Talisman on. Nice! Time to make my way to Castle Lenses for a little chit-chat with the resident Moon Knight. I already have the first grace here, which helps shortening my way to the cozy living room. I come in with flowers, but Rellana is clearly not a fan, and my first few attempts don't go that well as my weapon seems a bit too slow for her skill set. I tried to use my Ash of War a couple of times, but since I'm not doing enough stance damage, it doesn't really work that well. Eventually, I end up getting a stagger and almost beat her, but the blood-sucking tear ends up becoming my demise. Oh! That almost killed her. After this, I switch the Axe Talisman, which wasn't really getting any use, for the Claw Talisman and focus on punishing her with jump attacks. A couple more failed attempts and I finally convinced Rellana that taking the flowers would have been a better option. I'm now in Scooby-Doo Altos, which allows me to get my last fragment and reach level 20. While I'm here, I tell Leda some really bad things about Hornsend's past. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he likes pineapple pizza. And convince her to help me get rid of him later on. The path is clear, so I make my way to the main entrance of Shadowkeep, where the golden Hippopotamus is chilling in a corner. I buff myself and go in, hopeful for success, but forget hippos are mostly herbivorous, so maybe bringing a flower wasn't a good idea. Ooh. That's right. Oh well, never mind I guess. After a small incident, I get the storehouse first floor grace for later, and then backtrack to the area with the ghost boats to make my way to the Yunte ruins. All the way down, I enter the Darklight catacombs and descend into madness where I have to fight Jori one more time. This fight doesn't start well, but eventually I find an opening to pollenize him with my Ash of War setup and win in the very last second. We got it! We got it! With Jori out of the way, it is time to traverse the Forbidden Forest and look for a room in the closest mansion. Surely inflation won't be a problem for this property. I don't find much resistance on my way to the top and get to the boss fight fairly quickly. Midra is my favorite boss from the DLC, and so I end up beating him quite fast and in spectacular fashion. That's a lot of damage.
No, that's a lot of damage!
After a few attempts where I died to the explosions and even madness, I realized that my best shot is to go for charged attacks, so I put the Axe Talisman back and get through phase 1 easily, depleting more than half his HP right away and making it way easier to survive phase 2. Wait a bit. Back to the main entrance of Shadowkeep, it is now time to complete my evil plan to get rid of Hornsend, so I go out the shortcut door from the Hippopotamus lair and join Leda for this noble cause. The poor guy, man. That's one less annoying NPC to worry about later on. I now have to make my way towards the side entrance of Shadowkeep, so I take the underground path below Mort Ruins to Boney Village and ride north past the Hot Soup Fella and the Metyr Cathedral to reach the church district entrance. This place clearly has a huge infiltration problem, so being the good guy I am, I help drain the water to reveal a door to my next boss fight. At this point, it is obvious to me that all this water has worked wonders for the underground proliferation of this specific type of flower. It's a clash for the ages, flower against flower, except mine is not as big and apparently not as fast. I die a couple of times to getting smashed by the hands and have a hard time trying to land most of my attacks. This is a big weapon, but the range is a bit deceiving, which is another way of saying I suck at this boss encounter. It takes me a few minutes to get used to the moveset, but eventually, and with my dodging mastery, I managed to beat it. No, 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 no! Oh! Oh my god, now I'm dead. Okay, that was kinda lucky. That was kinda lucky. Becoming the superior sunflower gives me confidence, so I vow to rule the rest of this keep and make my way to a suspicious hole in the castle walls where I walk across the top of this big structure and find an elevator to the back gates of the keep. Commander Gaius awaits on the other side, and for the first time ever, I finally feel like I am in an advantage here. The fight doesn't start so well and I chug almost half of my flasks right away, but end up getting a stagger that changes the course of the battle and grants me an easy first try. For real this time. I'm so greedy. I now have 45 strength and 60 faith, which makes up for a pretty good damage output and should carry me through the rest of the run, be it with melee attacks or by focusing on the Ash of War. There's only one more boss to beat in this domain, and my only hope is that Messmer the Inhaler likes sunflowers. Breaking news? I don't think he does. I have very little time to take full advantage of my Ash of War here, and hitting it fully seems to never be possible. So I focus a bit more on charged attacks, barely making it to phase 2 where I finally get a stance break. Oh, oh yes, baby. Oh yes, baby. Get out of here. You're no match for my sunflower. With so many bosses beaten to death, I make a small detour to the nearby cathedral looking for absolution, but instead I get tasked with blowing some creepy giant finger bells. The first one can be accessed from the Shadow Keep itself by using the Oh Mother gesture on the Statue of Marika, which lets you enter the hinterlands and the site of the first spell. For the second one, I need to do a little bit of hiking, and since hiking means jagged peak, I make my way past the Dragon Man and climb all the way to the top to first take care of Bayle. My chat was trying to tell me that Bayle has two Placidusax heads on his torso, but I swear to Medicus that I wasn't able to notice it with all the ongoing action. Curse you, Bayle! This was probably the sloppiest fight of the run, but hey, if you told me I would be beating a boss that took me 6 hours on my first playthrough in about 10 minutes and with a sunflower, I wouldn't believe you. I end up getting hit by everything that you possibly can, and although it ends with a tie, I claim his heart, so it still counts. With the cute dragon out of the way, I backtrack a little and make my way to the Cerulean coast where I blow my second bell of the run. There's one last problem to solve in this area though, but to do that I first need to survive Stormtrooper Village and plunge myself into the unknown. The Putrescent Knight is weak to holy damage, so I don't face much trouble here other than actually, you know, hitting the boss. You can tell how excited I am. I finish with a bang, and just like that, I get my 7th remembrance of the run. See, you just have to hit the boss and it's fine. I'm finally free to go back to the cathedral to present the results of my investigation, in hopes of finally getting absolved, but Emir is having none of that, so he mysteriously vanishes, leaving me free to meet the Mother of Fingers. Metyr is a weird fight. Right, very weird. She's got a few tricky attacks like this laser or this explosion, but I'm also dealing a lot of damage, so I dodge the first laser and do a triple charged attack to get the stance break to get her to below 30%. I almost get blasted by the weird little orbs at the end, but managed to finish her off before I die again. Welcome on in, you guys. Oh, and now I die. Funny. My flower adventure is getting closer to an end, so I make my way to the ancient ruins of Ra, where I once again have to fight another freak of nature, Romina the Bud Saint, who quickly introduces me to her lovely domain. She can definitely move, but I only need to do 2 charged attacks to break her stance, which allows me to dominate the fight on the second attempt and get an easy win. Well, I guess that's it. No sweat. The thorns are now removed and I have an open corridor to the top of a near limb as long as I avoid Jori's admirers and the overjuiced lion warriors. Yeah, these guys can be quite annoying. There's only room for one person at the top, so I put an end to my partnership with Leda and take on a 2-on-1 fight where she brings her friend Dane to try and clap my cheeks. But fortunately, the Sunflower doesn't disappoint and completely destroys the martial arts specialist and Leda herself with yet again another TKO.
Make the world a gentler place.
I guess I just can't lose today, huh? Well, being wrong is part of the human nature, right? Radhone is weak to holy damage on phase 1, and with this baby right here, it only takes me 3 charged attacks to bring him into phase 2. Overall, it took me about 10 tries, so I can't really complain. 3. Sunflower attack! Let's go! If you like this run, you also may want to check this one right here where I beat the game with a different build. Oh, and by the way, I died again on the guy. And now I died because I'm not paying attention. Classic. I mean, it's okay. We need some YouTube content. It's okay.